Hello everyone, welcome to my nightmare. I am Grim, and today I'm here to tell you 3 terrifying stories written by an amazing author by the name Fatima. This is a Halloween special, so please sit back, relax and enjoy. I hate everything about Halloween. I don't want to see the decorations that come into local shops far too early. I don't want to see ghouls and ghosts. I don't even want to see pumpkins. I stay at home, turn off the lights so no trick-or-treaters come by. I wait for the holiday to end anxiously. I wasn't always like this, and I hate thinking about the catalyst that started it all. I was in 7th grade, and my brother was in the 9th grade. Ricky was so much nicer, kinder, and more handsome than I. I despised so many things about him. So every chance I got, I made fun of him. My friends did too. It never really bothered him until one October when we were watching a scary movie and Ricky was hiding his face behind a pillow during a horror scene. He was sitting beside his girlfriend and we all laughed at him. She even laughed but tried to hide it. We called him a big scaredy cat. I could see he was upset, so I tried not to bring it up again. It was a bloody scene after all, and not everyone is into that type of movie. Come Halloween, he tried to prove that he wasn't scared of anything. We all dressed up as superheroes, and he dressed as the Grim Reaper. I told my friends before we met up with Ricky and Sarah not to bring up the scary movie. Don't bring it up, just leave him alone, I told them sternly. What if he screams like a little girl? Can we bring it up then? Danny laughed. I punched him in the arm. Ow! I was just kidding, he responded. I'm serious. Leave him alone tonight. I picked up my Captain America shield, and we headed down the street. Ricky was pretty quiet, and him and Sarah held hands the whole night. They didn't really trick-or-treat, but they watched us. Danny's little sister was there with us too. She was only in 4th grade. As we finished trick-or-treating in our neighborhood, Danny asked if we could go a little further into town. There were some more dangerous parts of town my parent didn't let us go to, but Ricky wanted to prove he wasn't scared of anything and agreed to take us all. I told him we didn't have to go, and it's okay, but he insisted. Everything was fine for the first few houses, but then we knocked on one door where we heard a couple fighting. We should go, I tugged Ricky's sleeve. No, it's probably an act for Halloween. Ricky knocked again. I have a bad feeling about this, Sarah said. Just then, the door opened and a body dropped in front of us. It was a man covered in blood. We all stepped back and off the porch, but Ricky stayed put. Danny's little sister began crying and Sarah held her. It's just an act, guys. Ricky laughed and knelt beside the body. He even dipped his finger in the blood and even tasted it. That's when his face changed. The guy, covered in blood, reached for Ricky and grabbed his collar. Help me, he begged, and Ricky struggled to get the man off his shirt. As Ricky realized it wasn't an act, a tall woman in all black with blood on her face came up behind him with a knife. She tried to stab Ricky, but he walked back and fell down the stairs. The knife grazed his face, and we all began running. When we got home, we had to tell my parents what happened, and the police got involved. After the police wrote the report and left, I went to Ricky's room to see if he was okay. He wasn't responding to my knocks, so I opened the door slowly. He was sitting on his bed and staring at his hands that still had some blood on them. I tasted his blood. I thought it was candy. His eyes filled with tears. I laughed at a dying man. You didn't know. It's okay. I put my arm around him. I tasted his blood. He began getting loud, and my parents rushed into the room and held him. They told me to leave as they tried to calm him down. It's been over 20 years, but Ricky still has that scar and has never been the same since that day. He isn't the kind, happy-go-lucky person he used to be. He's afraid of everything and everyone. It makes me feel terrible that I am now married with 2 children, and Ricky won't let people come into his apartment. He does, however, dress up on Halloween, and walks around on the same street that he got the scar on. People have reported him to the police, but he always tells them the same thing. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. I joined a forum online to learn about lucid dreaming and how to control your dreams. It was during quarantine and I had nothing better to do. I always asked a question about things I was doing, like falling mid-flight or creating monsters and waking up out of fear. Then I got a private message by a user called Dare to Dream 42. She told me how I could be paired with a partner called a master dreamer, someone more skilled than myself, and become an expert lucid dreamer. Seeing as she didn't ask for money, I felt I had nothing to lose. You could meet up in dreams with a master dreamer to show you how limitless the possibilities are, she wrote. I thought to myself how this isn't possible, but let's see what happens. I mean, what endless possibilities for people to meet up with others in their dreams. The problem was you have to find someone you're dream capable with. The rules were simple. You can only speak in wake hours about lucid dreaming. No small talk, no getting to know one another. No sharing photos, and definitely no becoming friends. After your dream master helps you lucid dream on your own, you would no longer work or speak with them. Within a week, I was paired with a master dreamer. Cora was perfect, kind and understanding. She saw potential in me. I told her what things I absolutely didn't want to see in my dreams and all the reasons behind not wanting to see them. I mean, not wanting to see blood or murder didn't need an explanation, but I told her about my fear of spiders because of a traumatic experience as a child. I told her my fear of drowning and other things that I hadn't shared with others. I asked her what things she did not want to see, and she told me not to worry about her, that somehow simultaneously calmed and intimidated me. I was nervous, but also I felt like she knew what she was doing. The first few days were hard, because we'd be in the same dream, but we had to find one another. After we created methods and signs to find one another, we quickly began the process. She was beautiful, adventurous, and kind. I felt like I had a big sister showing me the ropes. It was like learning to ride a bike. While learning to fly in my dreams, I had moments I'd slowly be falling and she'd grab my hand each time. "Don't overthink it, Adam." She must have said it to me 20 times in the first 2 weeks. It worked though. I stopped overthinking. Once I mastered flying, she taught me to conjure up different items. It started with food, which was my favorite. The first time I thought up an apple, it was half green and half red. She laughed at me. I know, I'm overthinking it. I tried again, and it was a perfectly red apple. It even tasted like an apple, but super sweet. Then she wanted to place a random vehicle around my dreams, and I had to get them started up. In most dreams, you don't have to have car keys, but the problem I always came across was the car changing. So, first I'm in a big Hummer with, in a few moments, it's a tiny car without any walls. She taught me to keep the car constant. The next lesson was about animals and insects. I created a beautiful butterfly whose wingspan was bigger than mine. I was so proud, and it was so beautiful. And not a moment later, Cora made a spider the same size as my butterfly, and the spider devoured my butterfly. I freaked out. I woke up immediately. I told myself she didn't do it on purpose, and it must have been an accident. I emailed her about the incident, and her response was, "It must have slipped my mind." There was no apology, but I believed her. The next few days went by pleasantly. We worked together in our dreams, and we even made an island. As I was flying above it, I saw Cora make a boat. I didn't know why she was doing that, so I went to ask. "Cora, are you going to sea?" I asked nicely. She turned around, gave me a blank stare, and then smiled. Within moments, I was on a boat in the middle of the water and freaking out. I tried to fly off the boat, but I was overthinking it and too anxious. I kept panicking, and the boat slowly began filling up with water, causing it to sink. I shouted for Cora, and she was nowhere to be found. I began cupping the water with my hands and throwing it out of the boat, but it was hardly doing anything. Did Cora do this on purpose? What was going on with her? Why was she changing out of nowhere? I looked behind me, and Cora was there, floating above the water, smiling. "Adam, you have to face your fears." She then disappeared. It was that moment that I feared more than the water. I tried to wake myself up, but I couldn't concentrate. Now the boat was mostly submerged underwater, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I sunk with the boat, and my heart began racing. As it was a dream, I could breathe underwater, and I thought to myself, this isn't too bad. I'll be okay. That's when I turned around and saw a whale shark. It opened its mouth and came right towards me. I closed my eyes tight, and when I opened them I was awake. To this day it makes no sense to me, but I had a gash on my left shoulder blade. It was as if the shark really did bite me. The wound was bad enough to be concerned with, but not bad enough for an ER visit. I wrote to Cora that I never want to see her again and that she cannot join me in my dreams. I was now incredibly fearful of my well-being, knowing that I could physically be injured in real life. I figured she'd back off and leave me alone, but she responded, "Someone's being dramatic." The next 3 nights I was afraid to go to sleep. I barely slept, and when I did, my entire dream consisted of me being on lookout. I was fed up and wrote in the dream forum about what happened to me. When I logged in later that day, I realized that my account had been deleted without any reason. I didn't know what was going on anymore. I was livid, and I was hurt, and mostly I was exhausted. I was tired of letting some stranger make me feel bad. That night, I went to sleep early and was ready to see Cora in my dreams. I called out to her and was ready to fight. I went from my bedroom to a dark, empty hallway. I heard her voice calling my name, but the echo came from many directions. Then the voice came directly behind me, and I turned around quickly. It was Cora, but she was a big spider. My anger made me overcome my fear. "I'm not scared of you." I grabbed a knife that I was holding and stabbed her directly in the stomach. She pulled it out and laughed. Then she grabbed me by the throat and lifted me off the ground, and then dropped me. She then disappeared. I began choking and coughing really hard. The hallway was slowly filling up with water. It now covered my hands. I was still coughing, and then I felt something come up my throat. It was a spider. I began choking up spiders. Kept coughing up spiders, and the hallway was filling up with water. I tried not to panic, but it was my 2 worst fears, and they were both happening worse than I could have ever imagined. I woke up covered in sweat and crying. That was 2 years ago, and I'm happily married with a baby on the way. I don't think about what happened often, but I'm writing this all to you now as it's 4 a.m. and I woke up abruptly. I went downstairs to get some water, and my wife had fallen asleep on the couch with her laptop on her chest. This normally happens when she has a big project coming up. I took her glasses off her face, folded them, and placed them on the coffee table. I then kissed her forehead. Then I picked up her laptop and wanted to make sure that what she was working on was saved before I closed it. That's when I saw it. She had logged in on a sleep forum, one that I used before I had even met her. Her username was Dare to Dream 42. My heart sunk, and I told myself that this can't be real. I wish I had found out that she was cheating, because this is so much worse. I looked at her, and she was still fast asleep. Maybe I remembered Cora's username incorrectly. I looked at her past messages, and she had messaged multiple people about helping them with their lucid dreaming attempts. In some, she introduced herself as Corey, some as Cora. It was her. I'm married to my worst nightmare, and I have no idea what to do, or even how to bring this up to her, or even if I should. Let me tell you a story about a European lady named Emma who went to Afghanistan in the 70s. The group she was with travelled by van to different regions. On their way to Buck, they made a stop in a small country area to get gas and some more food. Emma, who was very curious and intrigued, wandered off by herself. As she was taking photos of the trees, she found herself beside a lake and saw a young boy sit beneath a large apple tree. In her broken Darley, she asked if she could have an apple. No, not from this tree. He didn't even look up at her, but was fixated on a small piece of wood in his hand. Any other tree is fine, but not this one. Well, why can't I have one from this tree? Emma was persistent. You can have one from any other tree. This one is important to me. Now he looked up at her. Trust me. You do not want one from this tree. She looked around at the other trees, but this tree had apples redder, fresher, and they even appeared juicier. She couldn't explain it, but she just had to have one from this tree. He warned her a third time that she couldn't have an apple from that specific tree. Then a woman's voice called out to him, and he ran home. Emma was excited. She didn't heed his warning. He probably just wants all these delicious ones to himself, she said as she began to reach for one. She grabbed an apple, washed it off in the lake, and took a bite. She closed her eyes and breathed in deeply. She had never tasted an apple so sweet. She grabbed a few more for the road and headed back to the van. Her friend, Margin, asked her where she had been, and she pointed at the tree. I made a friend. Margin didn't ask any questions, but looked over to where Emma pointed. The following day they had reached their destination in the north, and Emma had a throbbing headache. While everyone else was out shopping and sightseeing, she had to stay in bed. She was covered in sweat and had vivid nightmares all day long. It was the little boy from the tree, but he was half human, half animal. When she woke up and went to wash her face, she found leaves in her hair. She asked the Afghan woman in the house they were staying in if they had left the window open because she found leaves in her hair. "Even if we left any windows open, there's no trees besides our home." It wasn't the response Emma wanted to hear, but she couldn't think straight either. Not with her serious headache. After 3 days in this condition, Emma knew she had to go back to the apple tree. She even had 1 apple left. "I'll return this apple and everything will go back to normal," she tried to convince herself and calm down. On the way to Kabul, Emma asked if they could stop at the same country area, and the driver told her that would be fine. When they arrived, she still felt the intense headache, but she felt she may know how to heal it. She stepped out of the car and ran towards the tree. Immediately upon arriving, she did not see the boy anywhere. "Bakar Jan?" she called out for him. "Bakar Jan, I have the apple. I'm sorry. I'm placing it back on this tree." She put the apple at the bottom of the trunk beside the roots. The apple shriveled within seconds and turned black. Emma gasped. Her headache got worse and she felt the water in the lake may help her. She stepped into the lake and immediately felt better. She began swimming and her headache left immediately. She began laughing and singing. The water felt so good on her skin. She never felt freer. After 30 minutes, she tried to get out of the water, but she felt she got stuck on something. She looked up and the boy was there. He was crying. He covered his face with his hands. "I tried to warn you," he cried. "I told you. Why did you do it?" "What do you mean? What's happening to me?" Emma began to panic. Then his mother called out again. He ran home, but now Emma realized his mother's voice wasn't coming from a distance, but rather the big tree with apples. She tried to get out of the water faster, but now her fingers had gotten hard, almost like a rough texture, and she had no grip. She felt something on her face. It was another leaf. She pulled the leaf from her hair, but this time it was painful to pull. It was attached to her scalp. She placed both hands on her head and tried to remove the leaves, but her head was full of them now. Margin, who saw her go towards the lake, went to check on her, but when she arrived, she screamed in horror. Emma was now sprouting apples and had leaves for hair. She ran and tried to help her out of the lake, but it was too late, as her feet had turned to roots and were intertwined with the other tree's roots. When she pulled on her arm, it felt as rough as tree bark. Some pieces of bark even came off her arms. "Please don't leave me, Margin. I'm scared. Please don't leave me." "I'll be right back, I promise. I'm coming right back. I'm not strong enough to get you out by myself." Margin pulled away from her and Emma cried harder. "Please don't leave me. Please." Emma's voice began changing. She didn't sound like herself anymore. Her voice was becoming more hoarse. She couldn't speak anymore. It became entirely too difficult. Margin ran back to get help, but once the others arrived, Emma was nowhere to be found. There was only a lake and a few trees. One of them was new and attached to the larger tree. At the bottom of it was Emma's shawl. Margin cried. She kept saying sorry to Emma, but no one else believed what Margin saw. Nobody ever saw Emma again. A lot of people had theories, but none were confirmed. The only thing people knew for certain is they'd hear a woman crying while they swam in the lake. For the next few summers, Margin would visit the area and take some books to read besides the tree. She wasn't the only person that did this, and she saw some children, some men, and some women bring books, games, and even food to the trees surrounding the lake. Every once in a while, Margin felt a gentle breeze, and she closed her eyes to think of Emma. Now, weren't they some terrifyingly amazing tales? And I can't believe that I was given the honor to read them. If you liked today's video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Anyone who jumps on will undoubtedly help make my life that little bit brighter and my nightmares a little bit less dull. But alternatively, if you'd like to check out my social medias, you can find them in the description below. Just follow my Linktree. I'll say this to everyone listening: be safe wherever you are, and happy Halloween. This is Grim, signing off.